Welcome to another episode of Angling Wisdom. My name is Patrick Edwards. Thanks for coming back for another show. Last time we looked at how to break down a body of water, and this time we're going to jump into a few more details, so stick around. Welcome to the Angling Wisdom Podcast, the freshwater fishing podcast for multi-species anglers.
I've known Patrick for quite a few years, and there are a lot of people out there. It's an ego-driven industry. It's all about them. To find somebody that really wants to go find anglers for all different species, to bring them in, to give everybody a voice. This is the difference between what Patrick's doing and a lot of other shows. Is there's only a special few out there.
I have a very special guest all the way from Wapiti, Wyoming.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jim Zumbo. It's nice to actually spend 2.5 days fishing.
With a master angler like you, are you kidding me? This is a real treat.
Get ready for the culmination of angling wisdom and fun. I'm your host, Patrick Edwards, and this is the Angling Wisdom Podcast.
All right, so let's jump into part 2 of breaking down a body of water. Like I talked about last time, if you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to use your hard-earned days off to travel somewhere and go do some fishing, you want to set the odds in your favor as much as possible. This is kind of a given. I know a lot of you know this, but I know I've spent a lot of fuel, a lot of time off, a lot of money to go do these trips, and so you got a plan. If you haven't watched the first episode, watch that one and then come watch this one. This time we're going to get a little more granular. We're going to talk about different types of water. We're going to talk about things that you might look for, areas you might look for once you get there, because sometimes the research you've done, the best planning you've done, gets all messed up when you show up because things have changed. Let's start with number 1. When you get to a body of water and you've never been there before, you've done your homework, and you show up and the water levels are not what you expected. This happens quite often with reservoirs out here in the West. If you're out here right now, I can guarantee you're saying, where's all the water? Well, out here, there's a lot of irrigation. There's also drawdowns of water from our reservoirs to send downstream to the Colorado River, to the Missouri River, depending on which drainage it is. And so it may not have the water that you thought it was going to have when you show up. And that can be a big problem, because spots that maybe you wanted to fish that you saw on Google Maps or whatever device you were looking on or whatever program, they're not in the water anymore. They're dry spots. So then what? Or you may come in the springtime and all the spots that you saw are now underwater, and you can't really tell anything because everything looks different because the reservoir is much more full. Same with rivers. Sometimes rivers get drawn down quite a bit. Sometimes they're a lot higher than normal, just depending on time of year, different factors like precipitation, all kinds of things. So a lot can change. So when that happens, the best thing to do is go back to the basics. So let's say it's a reservoir. The first thing that you should do is think about, okay, where's my inlet and where's my outlet? There's always fish where there's running water. So if you have multiple inlets, multiple outlets even, you can look for those and you can kind of guess that there's probably going to be some fish immediately adjacent to that, not if right there on those spots. So that's spot number 1 that I would look. Spot number 2 would be any points or main lake areas that you can see that look like they have structure or might hold fish. The other thing that you can do too is just take the boat and go drive around. If you have sonar, check the sonar, just kind of check the lake, see what's going on. But I would say even prior to all those things, if you go to the bait shop first, talk to the people there that kind of know what's going on. They'll give you an idea and say, yeah, the water's really low, so you might want to look on these flats this time of year. Or maybe go check the points, go check the dam, go check the inlet, whatever that might be, because things do change. So you have to be flexible anytime that you're fishing. Plus, you may lay what you think is the best plan out, and you show up and you go to that spot and there's no fish. That happens. It happens quite a lot, where you show up on a spot and you look at it and you say, man, there is nothing on my sonar. I don't know what's going on here. That's when you have to pivot.
Fellow anglers, it's time to up your game with PK Lures, crafted to help you catch the fish of your dreams. Whether it's the classic PK spoon, the flutterfish, or the reliable PK ridgeline crankbait, PK Lures has the perfect lure for any fishing scenario. No matter if you're fishing on the ice or in open water, PK Lures has a wide range of lure options to help you catch walleye, trout, panfish, and more. These aren't just lures, they're proven performers. Designed by master angler Pat O'Grady and tested by some of the best anglers in the world, they are trusted for results. From the hard water to open lakes and rivers, PK Lures delivers. Find your perfect lure today at pklure.com and use the code WISDOM for 20% off of your order.
And I talked about this in the last one. What you should do is kind of map out the lake, figure out which points you would go to first, kind of make a B, C, D, E, F, G kind of plan, or 1 through 7 type thing where you have several spots that you want to go check out. If all of those strike out, again, just go back to the basics. Just kind of look on the shoreline. You can sometimes look and see where it'll transition from rock to soft bottom. You can watch and see if you're seeing bait fish in the water. This time of year in the fall, sometimes that's a really good indicator of where the fish are going to be. You can look and see what kind of hatch may be going on. There's a lot of different things that you can do to establish, okay, there's probably fish here or there probably isn't. So I'll give you an example. Right now we have fall turnover going on. So there's parts of our reservoirs that look like pea soup. It's disgusting. Looks awful. And it's not a spot that I would recommend you fish, especially with these algae blooms. Sometimes you'll see that as well. What I would do is just kind of look for the areas that are cleared up a little bit more, maybe go to some of those current areas. A lot of times emerald shiners and other bait fish will head to those areas this time of year. So focus on those kind of things. And again, definitely have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, something that you can go back to and you can switch things up. Points are always a good spot on reservoirs and lakes because fish will typically like stage off of those and you can catch them because they're trying to ambush bait fish. They're looking for food on those main lake points and whatnot. And a lot of times you'll have water coming in and coming around these points because that's where on these reservoirs, that's where the river used to run anyway. And so you can follow some of that terrain and just kind of look at it that way. If you have the really fancy map applications, which, you know, Garmin and Humminbird have a lot of those, you can also use those, especially if you have the little SD card that tells you all the contours on the lake. You can use those contour maps and you can go find those. There are some places that still sell physical maps of the contours. So if you go to the bait shop and you have no clue where to go, you can always buy one of those maps and that'll help you a little bit. So use the resources that are available. Those are always good things.
For me, fishing isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life. And every angler deserves a rod as unique as their journey. That's where TB Custom Rods comes in. Handcrafted custom fishing rods built to your exact specifications. Perfectly balanced and tailored to your style. Work with Trapper and choose your design, select your components, and feel the difference of a rod made just for you. Visit tbcustomrods.com to get started on your custom rod today.
Now let's talk about rivers. Rivers can be a lot different than reservoirs. And those of you who fish rivers know it's a really pretty simple system, but it bears going over. So let's say you're going to go fish a major river system. I'll just use dams as an example off of a reservoir. Right below dams where, you know, the outlet is and you have the water going into the river where it was originally anyway. Dams are always a good spot to look because there's always food there. There's always water coming through the generation cycle of those hydroelectric dams. And so you'll have fish that just wait for something to kick out of the reservoir. So always use that as an option. If you're allowed to fish up next to those, be careful. Some dams you can't actually fish right up to. I can think of several examples where they have signs that say, don't go beyond this point. And they mean don't go beyond that point. So you can definitely start there. I think that's a really wise spot. Plus, you'll notice that where right below dams, where it comes into a river, you'll have a big washout and you'll have like a bowl. And that deep water always has fish in it. And so that's always a good place to look. And then immediately coming out of those deeper washes and deeper holes, any bend of the river is always a good place to fish. So I always start a little bit up from the bend and work my way through the bend completely. Trout, walleye, carp, everything kind of hang out in those bends, catfish, because the water, what it does is the current will come around, it'll hit that kind of barrier of that wall, and it'll carve out a little bit over time, and it washes sediment downstream. So what happens in the corners is you get these deeper holes and deeper spots, and sometimes you'll get an eddy as well. Eddies are great because food like bugs and different things will just kind of circle around. So fish know if I want to eat, I can hang out in an eddy spot and I can go up and I can feed relatively easy. So those are always really high profile spots that you would want to fish on a river. The other thing too is if it's a river coming into a reservoir, that's also another good spot. Fish from the reservoir will creep up and go up the river depending on the time of year, but they're always looking for food in those places. So inlets and outlets of reservoirs on rivers is always great. The other thing as well is look for any spots where there's a disruption. So sometimes you'll have rock slides that come down into a river, which will create a wing dam or something like that where rocks kind of pile out into the water. That's going to disrupt the current, and that's also going to draw in bait fish and bugs and things like that, crawfish, which also attracts all the fish that you're chasing. So I would look for spots like that. If you have boulders, big rocks, big impediments in the water, those are always good things. Bridges, the pilings for bridges are always a good spot to look at, in front of, behind, to the side of. Fish will hang out and look for food on those. So rivers are pretty straightforward. Streams are very similar, so I'm not going to go there, but those would be the main things that I would look for. Also, if you're on natural lakes, which we haven't covered really yet, natural lakes are fairly straightforward. Inlets and outlets are your first spot. Second to that, look for any kind of structure similar to a reservoir, right? We're going to look for points. We're going to look for rocks. We're going to look for weeds. We're going to look for anything like that. Also, if you can tell on contour mapping, or if you're out in the boat and you're just scanning the lake, look for any of those transitional spots. Sometimes you'll transition from weeds to nothing, from rock to a sandy bottom. Look for any of those kind of areas and then determine if there are fish there, either by looking at your sonar. Maybe your sonar is really good. Maybe it's not so good. Maybe you don't have sonar. So then, of course, you would want to fish that spot and see if you could get anything to bite. But that would be a really good way to start on a natural lake. The other thing, too, is you have to be resilient and you have to put in some time. I know a lot of us, we have that inclination inside of us that's like, I should be able to pull up to this lake or this reservoir or this river and just be able to crush it. And I love that kind of confidence. I like pulling up to the lake being super confident, but the reality of it is that's probably not going to happen. So you're going to have to work for it. So if you show up and you give up within 30 minutes, you need to develop some resiliency. You need to figure out how to be like, okay, problem solving. I'm not catching them here. Either the fish are here and don't like what I have, or the fish aren't here and I need to go find them. It's pretty straightforward. It's really basic stuff, but you'd be amazed at how many people will quit because, well, I threw my line out and nothing happened. Well, did you move around? No. Did you change presentations? No. There's probably a lot of other things you could do. And I like to fish a spot for at least 10 to 15 minutes before I move on, just to make sure I cover the spectrum of things that I can do. And I try to fish the water column from top, middle, and bottom. Bill Siementhal, if you go back to an episode I did with him, he's a Hall of Fame fisherman, amazing guy. He talks about top, middle, bottom, breaking down the water, because sometimes the fish are higher in the water column, sometimes they're in the middle of the water column, sometimes they're at the bottom. And understanding that and figuring that out is super important if you want to catch fish. So those are just some basics, but I also want to talk about this too, is there's a lot of factors. to consider. You could be in the perfect spot and be there at the wrong time. And what I mean by that is you could be there, the fish could be there, they could be semi-active, but if a storm comes through and shuts them down, they're shut down. If you're using the wrong presentation, well, then you're going to be out of luck, but the fish are there. You have to figure out and kind of start kind of more broadly and narrow it down. So if you're one of the things I like to do when I get to certain bodies of water is sometimes I'll start by trolling some crankbaits. That covers a ton of water, right? So I know the guy at the bait shop said, and the biologist said, this side of the reservoir is typically pretty good. And I've got walleye, I've got trout, I've got who knows what. Then my recipe is, okay, cool. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to troll that area for just a little bit and check it out. Or I'm going to go there and I'm going to work this main point and I'm going to work from this side all the way around it and check all of it. And what's great about that is you're starting like on a high potential spot. You're covering a lot of water and you're going to do a really good job of seeing if the fish are there or not. And again, this varies widely depending on the species that you're going after, but really the principles are all the same. Check for the main spots that are going to hold the fish. Use the presentations for those species, especially for that time of year, and don't give up. Because if you stick with it and you spend some time out there, there's a very high likelihood of success. So again, be flexible, be resilient, have some grit. Don't be afraid to try new spots. Don't be afraid to try new baits. It's really important to follow the advice of the people that helped you in your planning. But hopefully this episode will help you break down bodies of water a little bit better and be a little bit more prepared. I could go into a whole lot of other subjects as far as gear and being ready for that or having your boat ready for that, but those are for a different day. So thanks again for tuning in. You can go to anglingwisdom.com. I've got all kinds of different shows, different topics. We cover all kinds of different species and presentation methods. And also, I want to say a big thank you to PK Lures and TB Custom Rods for making this show possible. If you get a chance, go check out both of them, pklures.com. You can use the code WISDOM for 20% off, and then go check out TB Custom Rods and check out all the awesome options that he has. He can make anything for you from a sturgeon rod down to a 5-weight fly rod. So check out Trapper's amazing products. And until next time, I'll catch you out on the water.
Angling Wisdom has been brought to you by TB Custom Rods and PK Lures. Don't forget to subscribe to Angling Wisdom on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts so you don't miss any of our new episodes. Also go to anglingwisdom.com for more fishing content. Until next time, I'll see you out on the water.